Something I get asked a lot is, how do you get such neat edges? So I think something you need to start with is making sure you have correct tension on the loom. This, for example, is loose tension. If I was to weave like this, then my edges are going to probably be wonky. So I need to get the right tension, and I also need to use separators. So I can use a piece of stiff paper for when I'm winding on, or I can also use the cardboard strips that came with the loom. So if you compare this tension now to what I had before, this is much more like what you need. Another way that helps to achieve neat edges is the way that you wind your yarn onto the shuttle. I always use a figure 8 winding. So instead of winding just around and around, I wind in a figure 8 around the edges, and this helps to release the yarn so that as you're weaving you're not going to get pulling, which can cause the edges to draw in. So I'm just doing a plain weave here, otherwise known as a tabby weave, and I'm going to show you what I actually do as I'm weaving to keep my edges neat. So taking the shuttle through one side to another, when we get to this point, we want to bring the yarn through so that it's about at a 45-degree angle, roughly. Now, as I'm doing that, I actually put my pointer finger in here with the yarn, and I just keep the finger there and I guess apply a little bit of downward pressure to make sure that it's sitting where I want it to sit, which is just above the last pick. Beat that. And then what I do is, you see how this bit of yarn here is naturally sitting up? I just give that a really gentle tug. It's barely even a tug, it's just pulling it down a little bit so that it sits down. Then I feel like it's aligned and ready for the next pick. So take that through, and I'll show you again what I did before. When I bring my finger in here, and I usually end up putting my thumb on top like that, I can see that it's sitting just on top of the last pick, the last row. It feels good, it's got good tension, and I'm happy with the way that looks. It's all aligned, it's all ready, so I know that when I beat, I'm not going to have any problems here. It's not going to be bulging out, it's not going to be drawing in. So to give you an example of drawing in, the effects that might have on your piece is, if I take this one through and I pull too hard on that, obviously that's drawing the work in, that's pulling too much. Now if I do the opposite and kind of let this all just hang out there and then weave that, well, I'm going to end up with little bits sticking out, other bits might be drawing in. I'd rather keep everything just right. Give that little pinch there, pull it over, and by the way, I'm using wool for this project, and wool has a lot more elasticity than cotton does, so I'm probably extra careful with wool, because when I pull that across, it wants to bounce back. So I take a little bit of extra time making sure it's all lined up. You don't have to do that so much with cotton, because once you've lined it up, it'll stay where it is. It doesn't have the elasticity that wool does. So just to show you once again briefly, pull that across, there goes that finger in there, it's all lined up, and then on the other side I just pull the tail down so that it's not facing up anymore. Now obviously I don't actually weave that slowly. You can get quite fast at this, and also if you try different techniques and your edges are still wonky, I would just suggest that you probably just haven't had enough practice yet. Like all things, practice makes perfect. You can get better and better at things as you go along. And if your edges are wonky to start with, that's quite normal. I find that it's something you can improve on very quickly. After a couple of projects, you'll find it looking much better. So I hope that helps you. Thanks for watching and happy weaving.